1947, the United States Army reported a crashed flying saucer was recovered near Roswell, New Mexico. But the following day, the Army recanted its sensational claim, stating the debris recovered was nothing more than a lost weather balloon. And for the next 30 years, the Army's official weather balloon explanation remained unchallenged. However, in 1978, a retired Air Force major named Jesse Marcel finally broke silence and revealed the debris he handled at the 1947 Roswell crash was not of this earth. It should be noted that Marcel made no mention of seeing a crashed saucer or aliens. All he described was seeing a field of scattered metal fragments. But Marcel's disclosure seemed to unleash a cascade of testimonies and conjectures that poured forth from the popular media for the following 2 decades. Tales of alien bodies, exotic technologies, and captured flying saucers have embellished Marcel's original account into what has become our nation's best-known UFO urban legend. And yet, despite years of high-profile media conjecture, what actually crashed in New Mexico in 1947 remains to this day a well-protected secret. However, what is certain is that on September 15, 1947, just 2 months following the alleged New Mexico saucer crash, President Harry S. Truman signed into law the National Security Act of 1947, which created the National Security Council and America's first peacetime civilian intelligence organization, the CIA. First CIA Director Walter Beadle Smith encouraged UFO reporting as a means of PSYOPs disinformation to protect existing secret aircraft projects. In late July of 1952, a rash of UFOs were reported buzzing our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. That same summer, Smith sent a memorandum to the director of the Psychological Strategy Board outlining the CIA's proposal to the National Security Council, stating that the UFO issue presented clear implications for psychological warfare. Smith went on to state, "I suggest that we discuss at an early board meeting the possible offensive or defensive utilization of these UFO phenomena for psychological warfare purposes." The National Security Council formed a critical link between the corporate financial world and the government-held secret technologies, a control nexus over rocketry, space, alternative energy research, and even UFOs. It is also important to note that when President Truman originally mandated formation of the CIA in 1947, there was no provision for congressional oversight. By the late 1940s and early 1950s, UFOs were becoming such a broad issue that Air Force General Nathan Twining recommended to President Truman that the UFO issue was bigger than the Manhattan Project and required that it be managed on a larger scale and obviously for a longer period. They would form nothing less than a government within the government, sustaining itself from presidential administration to presidential administration, regardless of whatever political party took power, and ruthlessly guarding their secrets while evaluating every new bit of information on flying saucers they received. As early as 1938, the notorious Orson Welles' War of the Worlds radio broadcast had already demonstrated that public disclosure of an alien reality could potentially spark a national panic, assuming what crashed at Roswell was in fact alien. But disclosing evidence of an advanced, undefeated Nazi technology was even more explosive, and debris recovered from the Roswell crash also bore suspiciously Nazi origins. It was fully understood by military intelligence that the Third Reich was deeply involved in advanced weapons technology by the end of the war, which included exotic propulsion systems and metallurgy. Not to mention that virtually the entire captured German V-2 rocket program, along with its personnel, had already been transplanted to White Sands, New Mexico, by the United States Army. In his book The Day After Roswell, Colonel Philip Corso revealed military concern that the crashed aircraft debris recovered in the New Mexico desert was also the product of Nazi superweapons science. Conversations with Werner von Braun and Villele at Alamogordo in the days after the crash intimated that there was a deeper story about what the Germans had engineered. The similarity between the Horten flying wing and the craft they had pulled out of the Arroyo was no accident. Dr. Hermann Oberth considered the Roswell craft from the New Mexico desert not a spacecraft but a time machine. Therefore, perhaps the EBs described in the medical autopsy reports were humanoid robots rather than life forms, specifically engineered for long-distance travel through space or time. So regardless of whether flying saucers were alien or Nazi or even Russian, the driving Defense Department imperative was to keep the UFO issue locked under absolute secrecy. This phenomenon, whether terrestrial or extraterrestrial, also demonstrated technologies that totally outclassed all of our nation's existing defense hardware, hence the imperative to initiate an emergency program to match those technologies, much like the top-secret Manhattan A-bomb project became a priority. Perhaps then it is perfectly reasonable that presidential administrations going back to the days of Harry Truman and Dwight Eisenhower have consistently avoided telling the American people the full truth regarding the presence of unidentified craft flying in our skies. Governmental secrecy regarding this issue remains the order of the day. Obviously, profound, serious motives still drive this decades-old cover-up. Whether related to the Roswell incident or not, over the many years since 1947, a profound alteration of our national defense establishment has evolved, shifting the reins of government power from the executive branch to a covert, interlocking association between defense contractors, aerospace industries, intelligence agencies, as well as international banking and petroleum cartels. In 1961, President Dwight Eisenhower explicitly defined the growing menace of this military-industrial complex to constitutional authority.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
Allegedly, a clandestine treaty and technology exchange with visiting aliens was brokered and managed under the auspices of Majestic 12, a top-secret study group originally assembled by President Harry Truman following the Roswell crash in 1947. And later, President Eisenhower himself was rumored to have secretly met with aliens in 1954. The late Phil Schneider claimed the aliens eventually betrayed this deal. Called the Grenada Treaty, this secret agreement allowed the aliens to take a few cows and test their implant techniques on a few human beings, but they had to give details about the people involved. Slowly, the aliens altered the bargain until they decided they wouldn't abide by it at all. As well, Colonel Philip Corso, former advisor to President Eisenhower's National Security Council, revealed the treaty was a Trojan horse. These creatures weren't benevolent alien beings who had come to enlighten human beings. They were genetically altered human automatons, cloned biological entities actually who were harvesting biological specimens on Earth for their own experimentation. As long as we were incapable of defending ourselves, we had to allow them to intrude as they wished. According to famed test pilot and CIA operative John Lear, it was President Eisenhower who allowed the reins of power to pass from the hands of the President into the control of the Pentagon. Ever since Eisenhower, the real rulers of the nation have been a military junta. If such a legendary scenario is actual fact, for any president to dare disclose such a horror story to the American people would be political suicide. Consequently, the government has endeavored to make UFOs a non-issue by promoting a steadfast campaign of dour ridicule for the last 6 decades. Project Sign, Project Grudge, Project Blue Book, the Robertson Panel, and the Condon Report all maintain a consistent party-line posture that nothing out of the ordinary exists. Concurrently, an unofficial disclosure campaign promoted through the popular media, all corporate entertainment subsidiaries of the military-industrial complex itself, took over the public relations marketing of the UFO issue. Alleged MJ-12 member General Nathan Twining encouraged use of this style of entertainment propaganda in order to create a climate of public attitude that would be able to accept the existence of extraterrestrial life without a general sense of panic. The flying saucer craze of the 1950s has evolved into a vast cultural mythos, thanks to a non-stop media blitz that continues to serve up a steady stream of science fiction conditioning to the unsuspecting public. Of course, the best disinformation contains a measure of truth. In a document purported to be the transcript of newly elected President Ronald Reagan's briefing on the subject of unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial visitation of planet Earth, CIA Director William Casey and his advisors shared carefully selected fragments of the alien mystery with the President. If authentic, this text reveals how even our nation's chief executives are at the mercy of whatever information the Intelligence Bureau is willing to divulge. A CIA operative called the Caretaker explained to President Reagan just how the media was being used to carefully craft a public perception of the UFO phenomenon. Project Dove was a covert operation developed with a dual purpose. The first person who helped us with this disinformation program was Mr. George Adamski back in the early 50s, and all productions of UFO-related movies. This helps the public to keep their minds open, but also allows us to keep our secret aircraft away from the public's knowledge. The first cooperative venture was the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still. That was a cooperative venture with the United States Air Force and the movie industry. We provided the basic subject matter for the movie Close Encounters. Based on such revelations, we must question just how much UFO truth has our government embedded in 6 decades of Hollywood science fiction films and television programs. Ultimately, out of this frothy entertainment souffle, what one creature has emerged as the single most iconic representation of extraterrestrials? Worldwide, what creature is most instantly recognized as an alien space visitor? The unrivaled star, the unquestioned media darling to emerge from this marketing blitz has been the Zeta Reticulum Gray. Either by accident or design, the relentless insectoid stare of the Zeta Gray is everywhere, on book covers, coffee mugs, t-shirts, bumper stickers, and keychains. Zeta Gray has been a merchandising phenomena, hawking everything from soda pop to bank cards. The Zetas even abduct the kiddie cartoon character Gumby. Clearly, the only alien worthy of officially unofficial notice is the Zeta Gray. Public awareness of these grays first came to light in 1966 with the book Interrupted Journey, which was the account of Betty and Barney Hill's abduction in New Hampshire in 1961. With subsequent books such as Bud Hopkins' Intruders, Ray Fowler's The Andreasen Affair, and Whitley Strieber's Communion, more media attention and credibility has been given to the Greys. However, what seemed at least an attempt at official disclosure came on October 14, 1988, in the guise of a 2-hour television special entitled UFO Cover-Up Live. Promising to expose the real truth about UFOs, this unprecedented special was aired simultaneously in the United States and the Soviet Union. This program promised an open and unbiased examination of the UFO issue. Yet at the outset, congenial host Mike Farrell, from the popular MASH TV series, summarily dismissed the famous Billy Meyer Pleiadian contact case as a complete hoax, without offering viewers the least shred of evidence pro or con to draw their own conclusions. Instead, Farrell proceeded to introduce a disclosure of sorts about the Zeta Reticulum Greys, which obviously was the primary focus of the show. Two informants purported to be government intelligence operatives, introduced as Falcon and Condor, filmed in shadow and with their voices electronically masked, told the Zeta story. Although no live Greys consented to be shown on camera, a montage of artist illustrations showed the Greys as benign guests of the United States government who had been given a base in Nevada. Falcon and Condor admitted that these creatures came from the Zeta Reticulum star system, but shared no further details as to the nature and purpose of their relationship with our government, save to say the EB, or the extraterrestrial biological entity in custody, was vegetarian, with a hankering for strawberry ice cream. How cute. Yet Falcon's deeply disturbing statement that the aliens had complete control over our nation's most highly guarded weapons installation, Area 51, was casually overlooked. The simultaneous broadcast of this program in both the United States and the Soviet Union suspiciously demonstrated high-level government collusion in its production. Clearly, UFO Cover-Up Live was a commercial of sorts to sell the Greys to the American and Soviet people, with an obvious subtext that the Greys had favored nation status with our government's intelligence establishment. Curiously, much of the information shared by Falcon and Condor was consistent with Ronald Reagan's ET briefing from 1981. Despite earning dismal network ratings, this program was a milestone in UFO disclosure. However, whistleblower Robert Lazar, a physicist employed at Area 51, revealed in 1989 additional information that Falcon and Condor failed to mention, suggesting the Greys have had a long-standing proprietary interest in the human species. Lazar reported access to a classified document that revealed these beings said that they had been visiting Earth for a long time, and that man was the product of externally corrected evolution. They said that man as a species had been genetically altered 65 times. They referred to humans as containers, yet I don't know what we're containers of. These beings conveyed information about the capability of affecting the human brain to anesthetize the human body. This is done without any physical contact from a remote source. If this information is true, perhaps such a disturbing reality explains the official ambivalence toward disclosure. It's one thing to reveal alien visitors, but quite another to reveal alien harvesters, or worse, to reveal that our government is actively assisting such alien enterprises. Another half-hearted soft-sell disclosure attempt in 1988 involved UFO researcher and former NASA missions analyst Bob Exler, who was approached to serve as consultant on a project called Cosmic Journey. This enterprise, developed by Ringling Brothers, was to assemble a traveling exhibit of rocket and space technology. combined with UFO information, including an actual alien body and cryogenic freeze, to be showcased in cities across the United States. But this project was terminated at the time of George Bush Sr.'s election as president. And then again in the mid-90s, a similar project was under consideration by the city of Scottsdale, Arizona. A permanent space technology exhibit was proposed as a public works renovation project. This exhibit was also slated to include an extensive UFO information component as well. Noted researchers such as Bob Dean, Wendell Stevens, and Jim Delatoso were to serve as consultants. My UFO art was to be featured in this project as well. But after several encouraging meetings with city planners, this public information project mysteriously evaporated. In 1995, Disney Corporation produced an astounding UFO documentary that was cautiously aired in only 5 cities across the country. In the 1950s, Disney had been approached by the Pentagon to produce films debunking UFOs. 40 years later, it seemed the government was using Disney Corporation for a reverse intent, selling the reality of alien life instead. This TV special was gently masked as a promotion introducing the newest George Lucas Tomorrowland thrill ride designed to acclimate the public to their inevitable alien encounter. Of course, Alien Encounter was the name of the ride. Disney CEO Michael Eisner introduced this surprisingly candid documentary outlining the general history of our government's secret involvement with aliens since the famed Roswell crash in 1947. As well, this documentary revealed both the fact of our military's possession of captured aliens and spaceships, as well as its motivation for absolute secrecy. What you can't explain, they reasoned, you must deny. For governments determined to maintain their authority, extraterrestrial contact is pure dynamite. But again, this disclosure effort ran out of steam. The Disney UFO documentary was never aired nationally, and the Tomorrowland Alien Encounter ride was eventually replaced with little fanfare. Meanwhile, serious researchers were discovering darker evidence revealing the gray agenda. Rampant reports of abductions and cattle mutilations continued. As an abductee herself, the late Dr. Carla Turner speculated, if we are indeed a multi-purpose resource for the aliens, one which they want to continue to use, could they be performing the various reproductive genetic procedures in order to make alterations in their livestock that better serve the uses for which we are harvested? In 1997, the nation was horrified by the Heaven's Gate mass suicide scandal in San Diego, where members of a UFO cult took their own lives allegedly at the bidding of gray extraterrestrials. Thanks to full mass media coverage of this debacle, UFOs for a time became a virtually taboo topic. Were researchers unraveling too much truth behind the ET enigma? Clearly the danger remains that rather than simple conditioning to an ET reality, public perception can be steered or manipulated to benefit any number of covert agendas. The drift away from the benevolent alien scenarios to hostile invaders themes has become dominant in recent films, and none so explicit as National Geographic's television documentary, When Aliens Attack. Yet how can we hope to engage conventional defense tactics against enemy aliens capable of controlling our minds from a remote source, or who already have complete control over our nation's most sophisticated weapons installation? Is such spin cautionary warning of an impending war with ETs, or could it serve as a useful propaganda tool for a staged false flag alien attack to justify further need of the military-industrial complex? Vast monolithic defense industry conglomerates require vast monolithic military threats to justify their existence. Nobody ever got rich by profiteering from peace. The notorious report from Iron Mountain reminds us, the existence of an accepted external menace, then, is essential to social cohesiveness as well as to the acceptance of political authority. The menace must be believable, it must be of a magnitude consistent with the complexity of the society threatened, and it must appear at least to affect the entire society. Have decades of popular media science fiction disclosure brought the population any closer to the truth regarding UFOs and extraterrestrials? Is the public really being conditioned or just conveniently befuddled? The primary motive for government non-disclosure of an extraterrestrial reality has been defined as protection of the existing political and economic order from collapse due to exposure to a more advanced extraterrestrial civilization. But does this rationale for non-disclosure actually provide a convenient excuse for decades of corporate and political abuse of power and wealth as well? Dr. Stephen Greer states, "This cover-up, no matter how well-intentioned initially, got carried away with its own secret power. It abused this power. It has hijacked our future for 50 years. The reasons for secrecy are clear. Global power, economic and technological control, geopolitical status quo, the fear of scandal surrounding the exposure of such projects, and their behavior." After World War II, much of our American science was preoccupied with advances in rocket technology for defense purposes and manned space exploration as well. But aside from providing spectacular television news footage, giant rockets were in fact a monstrous waste of energy. The advanced technologies discovered since the Roswell incident, whether German or alien or a combination of both, revealed chemical rockets to be clumsy, inefficient, and totally impractical for interplanetary space exploration. The secret to space travel was understanding and mastery of the unified field, the fundamental fabric of the space-time continuum itself. Ben Rich, the father of the stealth fighter bomber and former head of Lockheed Skunk Works, who was also in charge of operations from 1975 to 1991, confided just before his death in 1995 that the Black Ops Research Group had done just that, mastered field propulsion flight systems. He stated, "We now have the technology to take ET home. No, it won't take someone's lifetime to do it. We now have the capability to travel to the stars. First you have to understand that we will not get to the stars using chemical propulsion." Rich further confided that linear space travel was impractical, but that all points in space-time are connected. Field propulsion systems can transcend linear time, making interstellar space travel a workable practicality. In the span of time from 1947 to 1995, alien technological realities, at first intellectually shattering, had, according to Rich, become workable scientific practicalities to terrestrial engineers. So here's the disclosure disconnect. To preserve the status quo of national social stability, the Black Ops community directly involved with quantum technologies has become so far removed from mainstream Americana that it has evolved into a separate, high-tech empire unto itself. An elitist hybrid civilization literally disintegrated from its parent civilization. As well, spin-off technologies that could easily benefit the mainstream population appear to be deliberately withheld. So more than the cultural shock of an extraterrestrial reality, the economic shock of disclosing free energy quantum technologies would likely precipitate a global meltdown of the petroleum-dominated geopolitical infrastructure. Researcher and disclosure advocate Richard Dolan states, The basic idea of the breakaway civilization is simply that you have a secret group, a classified group of people with access to radically advanced technology, radically advanced science, and they just don't share it with the rest of the world. One scientific breakthrough leads to another, and that leads to another, and so on. So the next thing you know, you have a separate group of humanity that is vastly far beyond the rest of the world. I should think that members of the breakaway civilization might despair of ever educating the rest of humanity on what is going on. Their own reality is probably so far beyond our own, they may rightfully ask, how can they bring us up to speed without causing a worldwide psychological meltdown? Dolan further states, the implications of a UFO reality and cover-up are profound. It means that our society has lived in an official reality so incomplete, so inaccurate, that we may with justice call it fictitious. It means that the history we have learned, the science we think we know, and the very core of who we think we are, need to be rediscovered. With this in mind, perhaps the most devastating truth full disclosure would reveal is that antiquated mainstream Americana has become technologically irrelevant. In 2001, Newt Gingrich introduced the Age of Transitions, which showcased the National Science Foundation's workshop agenda to establish on this planet a new species of totally controlled, bioengineered humans. Inevitably, the cybernetic enhancement of human performance is sneaking up on society. Dynamic advances in artificial intelligence technology are swiftly replacing human viability in our culture. In fact, the present exponential growth of bioengineering and computer technologies is about to marginalize the human factor altogether. In 1947, Dr. Hermann Oberth referred to the extraterrestrial biological entities allegedly recovered from the Roswell crash as humanoid robots rather than life forms, specifically engineered for long-distance travel through space or time. Today, eugenics science tells us that by the year 2045, the cybernetic post-human will have no gender, will be non-reproductive, and will be improved in the sense that it will be tailored to specific tasks. Would it not be shocking for UFO disclosure to ultimately reveal that the notorious gray aliens are in fact not aliens visiting from outer space at all, but genetically altered humans visiting from our own future?
We'll now hear from Richard Dolan for 10 minutes.
Thank you, distinguished members of the committee. And let me just say it's been an honor for me personally to be here with you all week, to be able to give statements to you and to chat with some of you privately as well. Regarding disclosure, I have often felt that disclosure on the matter of UFOs and ETs, possible extraterrestrials, is a paradox. It's impossible, but it is inevitable. It's impossible because there is no political motivation for it. It's inevitable, however, because our leaders are not the only factor in this equation. There are other beings, after all. But mainly, I would say there's us, the people, who are going through this greatest social, cultural, and especially technological transformation in the history of humanity. In fact, I would say that we are the game changers. Someday, and it won't be too long in the future, something is going to force someone's hand. It could be a major sighting, it could be a major leak, something that can no longer be denied. After all, we are fast approaching what experts in artificial intelligence call the singularity, when computing intelligence exceeds our own. In such a future, I ask you, can we really think we will still be stuck in neutral on this issue? Something will force the president's hand. He or she will finally hold that long-awaited press conference. and make that bombshell statement. It might go something like this. I have been advised by the National Security Council and heads of our intelligence community that there is a reality to some of the UFO phenomenon, in that some UFOs are real physical craft not manufactured by any known civilization on Earth, or words to that effect. It's the kind of statement that many proponents of UFO disclosure would like to hear, but the real question is, what next? Because there would be quite a few follow-up questions. At the top of the list will be questions about who these other beings are and what their agenda or agendas might be. And this will be a very difficult question for any president to answer. In the first place, there is a likelihood that even the leaders of the black budget or breakaway society that have been on top of this for years, they may not even know, or at least not fully. And what if they do know? And moreover, what if at least some of that answer includes information that might be upsetting? Divining the intentions of non-human visitors or permanent residents, whatever they may be, might not be the easiest thing to do. But it's entirely possible, judging from the data we do have, that some of them may not care very much about humanity. Some may not. What if an agenda has been determined within the intelligence community, and this agenda includes something to do with alleged abduction phenomena? And even if that isn't true, does any president honestly believe he or she can contain rampant speculation along these lines? And even if the intentions of these other beings are said to be neutral or positive, there will clearly be tremendous suspicion by large swaths of humanity. This will not be an easy sell. There will already be a sizable number of people predisposed to interpreting these other beings as nothing less than demonic. Short of bringing one of these entities to a podium and subjecting it to hours and days and weeks of questions by an insatiable public, it's very likely that any moment of disclosure will not satisfy the public the way it would like to be regarding alien motivations. That's only the beginning of the problems. One early and obvious question that will arise, one which will have deep, profound political implications, will be very simple. How long have you managed to keep this secret all these years? Consider that our entire society has been told that UFOs do not represent anything truly anomalous, that ETs or aliens are definitely not here on Earth interacting with us, that UFO believers may be well-meaning but have been mistaken about all of that. This has been a mindset embedded within all of our major institutions. Our educational institutions, from primary school through universities and postdoctoral levels, throughout our major news organizations in which an open belief in UFOs is a third rail for one's career, throughout our scientific establishment for sure, and also throughout our political structure. Political careers have been destroyed, or at least severely undermined, by the UFO taint. Remember what happened to Dennis Kucinich in 2008 after it became known that many years before he had seen a UFO. Never mind the fact that the two witnesses he had been with came out and corroborated the sighting. They saw the same thing. All of these institutions and others have treated the UFO topic as nothing more than a joke, something suitable for immature minds. Can it really be that the professors throughout the United States uniformly have dismissed this phenomenon without any cooperation from the intelligence community? Ditto the world of science, politics, and media. Well, no, not when the most modest amount of research shows strong intelligence community influence over all of these institutions. In other words, people will see very clearly that the national security apparatus has created a global culture that has suffocated the truth. Researchers will begin to investigate in a serious way just how these relationships have undermined the credibility of all those institutions and undermined our apprehension of truth. The result will be a major cultural and institutional house cleaning, but it won't stop there. Citizens will naturally want to know specifics about the structure of secrecy itself. That is, they will want to know, if the U.S. president has been out of the loop all these years, as it seems, then who exactly has been in the loop? Who has been running the UFO cover-up? With due respect to Stephen Bassett, that's the phrase that I do use. If the answer is anything along the lines of my own research so far, it will show that the cover-up has long ago gravitated away from formal presidential authority into international and private hands. It's not that the U.S. president is a non-player in all of this, but rather is more like the public face of the true power elite that stands behind. We all, I think, have come to understand this when it comes to power in general, and this will likely be the case when we begin a sophisticated analysis of UFO secrecy. In other words, the moment of disclosure will trigger an intellectual revolution worldwide relating to the true structure of power on planet Earth. It will be a moment in which the world sees and acknowledges that the emperor has been wearing nothing at all. The political fallout will be tremendous, and a great battle will develop within the first year of disclosure. Think of it this way: just because the president has been forced into making an announcement doesn't mean that the CIA and all the other intelligence groups that have been managing this will simply walk away. There has been a concerted effort spanning an entire human lifetime to control this topic. A great deal has been invested, and mere disclosure is not going to change that. The real issue in the immediate post-disclosure world will be who controls the spin on the story. Because right away there will be a great divide, a chasm. Once this topic is available for open discussion, you can be sure that people around the world will be demanding answers. You can be just as sure that on the other side of the fence, information will be handed out as sparingly as possible. Government spin doctors will be out in great numbers trying to control the situation according to national security policy, although this time independent UFO searchers may get a public hearing that they hadn't gotten before. If the official spokespersons are making misleading or false statements, it's going to be a bit easier post-disclosure for independent researchers to point this out, because this time the world will be much more likely to listen. And there will be many, many more investigators into this topic after disclosure than there are today. How all that will turn out, only time will tell. There are so many other messy issues relating to global finance, energy, truth commissions, lawsuits, cultural transformations, cultural wars, religious and spiritual changes, scientific paradigm shifts, and ultimately geopolitical changes that will allow us to meet the challenge of, shall we call them others, here on planet Earth in some sort of coordinated, hopefully logical manner, and even more hopefully in some way that answers to the people rather than a handful of elite human players. And for that, we will need a groundswell of public pressure from below and tremendous political energy, ethics, and courage to take on the black budget culture that has dominated this subject for so long, and to begin a long, hard fight to reclaim some measure of freedom and dignity for humanity while we begin a new, better, and more mature phase of our existence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dolan.